At least once or twice a year for the past several years, I have received phone calls asking about the witch doctor fowl, who made them, how they were bred, and if still have any for sale. Just this past week, I have had 3 phone calls seeking the same information, so I have decided to set the record straight and write what will most likely be the last story about this great strain of black-brown red fowl that were in the eyes of many the greatest slasher cocks that were ever made. I got married in November of 1950 and moved to Austin, Texas with my wife Moselle. As a wedding present, she bought me a trio of Bill Schaffer mugs from William McCullough of Kinnington, PA. The cock weighed about 5½ pounds, was brown-red in color, stood up like a fighting cock, and indeed was fought once as a stag after I bred him, winning in one fast pitting. On hen was coal black, and one hen was the same color as the cock. I mated them and raised 37 stags, all looked alike and were the best sparring fowl that I had ever seen. However, I lost 4 of the first 7 that I fought, and was quite disappointed as they outfought the other roosters but were not cutting, which in fast company is fatal. I wrote to my good friend Randall Berkey, San Antonio, Texas, and told him my problem. In turn, he told me that Bill Schaffer used the Berkey of 61 Derby gaffs when he won the Orlando tournament 13 out of 15 fights. I ordered a pair of the B61s, 2 and 8-inch long, and put up another show of stags. I won so many fights in the first pitting that it was unbelievable. One of the greatest cocks I ever owned was One Round Hogan, who won 7 one-pitting fights in my hands and 2 other fights for Shorty Awalt while I was away in the Army. In 1952, I was drafted into the Army and sent to France. I left my brood fowl with a local cocker for safekeeping and put a frying-sized trio on the yard of my good friend John Depew of Austin, with instructions not to breed any pure, but with permission to cross if he wouldn't sell any of the offspring. One other cock I left on a walk at Bee Caves, Texas. The cocks that I had left I loaned to Shorty Awalt, and he was to fight them at Shelley Clay's pit at Waco, Texas, the following year. The brood fowl were not to be bred, and no fowl to leave his hands. I had one cock that had never quite gotten over the roop, and my wife and I took him to William's Pit, Kingbury, Texas, to get him whipped as I hated to kill him. He won in one pitting, and I rematched him, winning the second time in 3 pitings. As I told the crowd to which I brought him to get whipped, I couldn't refuse when I was offered 4 ounces of weight to fight him the 3rd time against a fresh cock. This fight lasted over an hour, but the little mug won, giving him 3 victories for the day. I refused $100 for him and pulled his head off, not wanting this blood to get out. The next year, while I was in France, Shorty and J.D. Cantwell took the Schaffer mug cocks that I left and went to Waco and won the biggest derby of the year, 5-1. Junior Whitted handled these cocks and tried to buy them, just as did most everyone there. Shorty turned him down. Junior took his winnings and purchased a trio of mugs from Bill McCullough, being the same person I got mine from, as he couldn't buy mine. The second trio didn't look like my mugs and couldn't fight like them either, and Junior disposed of them after I got back from the Army. The original broodcock died while I was in the Army, but I got back the original hens and one of their sons. There was a big misunderstanding about the terms of how I left these fowl, and Shorty killed the offsprings and obtained new fowl of a different strain. We never fought together as an entry after that. So much for the mug blood. John Depew returned my mug trio and told me that he had borrowed a Texas Ranger hen from Gus Frithioff and bred the Schaffer mug stag to her. He had some beautiful hens from this mating, and years later I bought 2 of the last hens from this mating. Junior Whited had moved out on a road close to me and had over 300 cocks in his backyard. Junior paid top dollars for the very best fowl that money could buy. In the yard was Duke Hulsey's, Billy Rubel, Grady Hamilton, Cecil Davis, D.A. Morton, Tom Spurrier, and other fowl too many to recall. I told Junior that I wanted to buy a top hatch cock, and he told me to take my pick. We discussed the mating at great length, and he recommended a beautiful Mill Mims hatch cock, explaining to me that he gave $500 for the trio, and that the fowl came from Owen McGuinness, who got them from Duke Hulsey, and in turn let Bill Mims have them. Carl Malls had brought the Mims fowl to Austin, and Junior called them the greatest hatch fowl in America. This Mims cock was the daddy of the witch doctors. I raised a yard full of these fowl from this mating and was looking for a name that would excite the island people in case I wanted to ship my surplus to the Philippines. When Buck Biggs came to my house with a box full of red quill stags to fight, I found out that my wildest dreams had come true. I could hardly get one whipped. My percentage was something like 95%. Next came Bubba Reeves, Gus Frithioff, Preston Barnett, Red and Joy Knowles, Ben Curry, Dudley Bryant, Cy Memon, and Junior White, with the outcome always the same: too much doctor. Then I took a show to Luther Watson's and won 7 straight. I knew that I had hit the jackpot in Witch Doctor Fowl. One stag won 9 fights before 11 months of age and graced the May 1964 cover of the Gamecock. A few days later came a letter from Guam from a cocker named Sammy Lee wanting to buy the stag on the cover, which was the famous Dr. Dandy. I thanked him by return mail and declined to sell. 3 days later, I received a phone call from Guam from Sammy, still wanting to buy Dr. Dandy. Once again, I refused. Then he told me that he was being beaten badly in cockfights in Guam and had lost several $1,000s. He offered to pay $300 for the loan of the stag for 1 fight and would return him if he won. I shipped Dr. Dandy, and cocking history was made. Sammy hacked the stag for $4,700 and won in a buckle. Another phone call came, and Sammy requested that I permit him to come to my house to see these fowl. But first he wanted to take him to the Philippines and fight the top cocker of that time, who was fighting Thunderbirds from Duke. He was willing to pay an additional $300 rental, and I agreed. Sammy fought Dr. Dandy for $30,000, and he was called the greatest cock to ever fight in the islands. He won in 2 pittings and was cut through the liver, dying 3 days later. A marble stone marks his grave site. Sammy Lee showed up at my house a week later and took every stag I owned of witch doctors and started fighting them for huge amounts of money. Gamecock carried stories and the fame grew. They won mains in straight fights for $10,000 and $20,000 per fight. No one wanted any of their business. For 5 years, Sammy ruled the roost. He loaned Raymond Rivera 6 of these stags, and Raymond won 6 straight for a fortune. I have a copy of his letter trying to purchase more. Another great and famous cock of the witch doctor breed was called the Christmas cock. I sent him to Sammy Lee in Guam as a stag, and Sammy won 7 slasher fights with him before he was 2 years old. He was cut up badly during his 7th fight, and Sammy gave to a friend in Guam. The friend told Sammy that he was better than any Christmas present that he has ever received. The cock healed, and when Christmas Day rolled around, the friend couldn't resist and fought him, believing that Christmas was lucky for this bird. He won and was repeated back every Christmas Day until he had won 13 fights, then totally and permanently retired. This cock was famous throughout all the islands and a most sought-after bird. I have no report on any offspring or if he was ever bred. I sent a trio to Paulino Ochoa in the Philippines, and the reported record was 64 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws. Over 100 letters were received, still on hand, willing to pay any price for a feather. I never offered to sell any, no ads were run, but Gamecock would give my address to all who inquired. I enjoyed the fame. The bubble burst when I lost both original hens due to old age and bred the cock over his daughters. The first one of these I fought was jerked out of a pen and carried to Ken Teeler's house and fought at Ken at 9 months old. He quit and ran off after a few pittings. I was crushed not only because my famous witch doctors had run off, but I had over 150 brothers and half-brothers to this. I went home and fought the stags at each other and killed the winners. Eldon Molish and Randy Wallace aided me in this slaughter. I had 22 left and we were too tired to fight the rest, so we quit. A month later, I sold Gus Frithioff the 22 that were left and told him that when he shipped them, that he was not to tell anyone where he got them. However, I had fought over 100 brothers to the runner and all proved game. Gus shipped them to South America, and the report came back that the first 19 fought, won. I killed all the sisters and gave Gus the full sister to Dr. Dandy, which I had turned down $500 for. He bred her to a Texas Ranger cock, and the report is almost unbelievable. This family won 300 fights, lost 22, and drew 12. One man won 104 and lost or drew 10.